February 14th, 1912, Volume 11. Jesus looks at everything in the will, and it is there, in her will, that the creature keeps the ownership of her things. In the divine will, all things become equal. Continuing in my usual state, my always adorable Jesus came while I was telling him, "Tell me, O Jesus, how it comes about that after you have disposed the soul to suffering, and she loves suffering, knowing the goodness contained in it, and she suffers almost with passion, believing that her destiny is to suffer. At that very moment you take this treasure away from her." And Jesus, "My daughter, my love is great, my rule is insuperable, my teaching sublime, my instructions divine, creative and inimitable. Therefore, in order to make all things, great or small, natural or spiritual, painful or pleasant, acquire one single color and have one single value, once the soul has been trained to suffer and arrives at the point of loving it, I let this suffering pass into her will as her own property. So every time I will send her a pain, she will always be disposed to suffer it and to love it, since she keeps within her will the property and the dispositions. I look at things in the will, and it is as if the soul always suffered, even if she does not suffer. Further, in order for pleasure to have the same value as suffering, and in order for praying, working, eating, sleeping, in sum everything, whatever they might be, since all can be, if things are of my will, I allow the soul to practice all things in my will with holy indifference. So it may seem to the soul that just as I give her something, I take it away from her, but it is not true. Rather, it happens that at the beginning, when the soul is not yet well trained, she is sensitive in the suffering, praying, or loving. But when with practice these things pass in her will as her own property, the sensitivity ceases, and as she occasionally needs to use these divine properties which I made her acquire, she begins to exercise them, as the opportunity arises, with firm step and imperturbable heart. For example, does suffering occur? She finds within herself the strength and the life of suffering. Must she pray? She finds within herself the life of prayer, and so forth with all the rest. According to what Jesus says, it seems to me this way. Let's suppose that I received a gift. Until I make up my mind on where I should keep that gift, I look at it, I appreciate it, and I feel a certain sensitivity in loving that gift. But if I keep it under lock and key, no longer watching it, that sensitivity ceases. With this I cannot say that the gift is no longer mine, rather it is certainly more mine since I keep it locked, while before it was in danger and someone could have stolen it from me. Jesus continues, "In my will all things hold each other's hands. All look alike, and all are in agreement. Therefore suffering gives rise to pleasure and says, 'I have done my part in the will of God. Now you do yours, and only if Jesus wants it will I place myself in the field again.' Fervor says to coldness, 'You will be more ardent than I if you will content yourself with staying in the will of my eternal love.' Prayer to work, sleep to vigil, illness to health, everything, all things among themselves, it seems that each one of them leaves its place to the other to be in the field, but each one of them has its own distinct place. Then it is not necessary for one who lives in my will to move to place herself in the act of doing what I want. She is already in me, like an electric wire, doing whatever I want." February 14th, 1912, Volume 11, Offering of a Victim. Continuing in my usual state, my adorable Jesus made himself seen crucified, with a soul near him who was offering herself to Jesus as a victim. And Jesus told me, "My daughter, I accept you as a victim of pain. All that you will be able to suffer, you will suffer as if you were with me on the cross, and you will release me with your sufferings. Many times this escapes you, releasing me with your sufferings. But know that I was a peaceful victim and host. You too, I don't want you an oppressed victim, but peaceful, joyful. You will be like a docile little lamb, and your bleeding, that is your prayers, sufferings, and works, will serve to soothe my embittered wounds." February 14th, 1922, Volume 14, The Happiness of Jesus When One Writes About Him. As I was in my usual state, my sweet Jesus made himself seen, all pleased, and with an indescribable contentment. And I said to him, "What is it, Jesus? Are you bringing me good news that you are so content?" And Jesus told me, "My daughter, do you know why I am so content? All my joy, my feast, is when I see you write. I see my glory, my life, and the knowledge of me that multiplies more and more, being inscribed in those written words. The light of the divinity, the power of my will, the outpouring of my love. I see everything written on paper, and in each word I feel the fragrance of all my perfumes. Then I see those written words run in the midst of the peoples, to bring new knowledges, my outpouring love, the secrets of my will. Oh, how I rejoice so much that I don't know what I would do to you when you write. And as you write new things that regards me, I keep inventing new favors in order to repay you, and I dispose myself to tell you new truths so as to give you new favors. I have always loved more and reserved greater graces for the ones who have written about me, because they are the continuation of my evangelical life, the spokesman of my word. That which I did not say in my gospel, I reserved to say to those who would write about me. I did not finish preaching at that time. I must preach always, as long as the generations will exist. And my love, to write the truths that you tell me is a sacrifice. But the sacrifice becomes harder, and I almost feel no strength to make it when I am obligated, and when they force me to write of my intimacies between you and me, and of things that regard me. I don't know what I would do so as not to put the pen on paper. And Jesus, you remain always aside. It is always about me that you speak, what I do to you, how much I love you, and where my love toward creatures reaches. This will push others to love me, so that they too may receive the good that I do to you. Besides, this mixing you and me in writing is also necessary. Otherwise some might say, to whom did he say this? To whom was he so generous in lavishing his favors? Maybe to the wind, to the air. Is it not said that in my life I was so very generous with my mamma, that I spoke to the apostles, to the crowds, and that I healed such and such sick person? And therefore everything is necessary. And be sure that in what you write it is always me that you make known more. February 14th, 1938, Volume 35. How the acts of one who lives in the divine will are extended for all, and become the narrators of the Supreme Being. Display of love. How God created forgiveness in creating the Virgin. My flight continues in the divine volition. Oh, how lost I feel inside its immensity. Its power and activity are such that, when it operates in the act of the creature, it wants to give that act to everyone, filling heaven and earth, to make everyone see and feel what it can do and how it can love. I remained surprised, and my beloved Jesus, visiting my little soul, all goodness, told me, "My blessed daughter, The love of my will operating in the creature is such as to appear unbelievable. When it works, my will wants all to receive that act and make it their own. With its omnipotent breath, it puts wings on that act so as to impose it on the sun, the heaven, the stars, the wind, the sea, and even in the air that all breathe. Then it flies higher up to the celestial regions, and everyone, the angels, the saints, the Mother and Queen, and even our divinity, goes through that act in such a way that they all must be able to say, "This act is mine." But do you know why? The love of my will is such that it wants everyone to possess its act, giving life to each one of them. It wants to decorate, ornament, and invest everything and everyone with its creative virtue in order to receive the glory, the love, and the honor of my will from everything and from each one. My volition never stops. It is satisfied only when it sees that its act has filled everything. Then it carries along with itself, as a triumph, the creature who gave it the freedom to operate in her act, to make it known and be loved by all. These are our feasts, our pure joys of creation, to be able to place ourselves in the creature as if we wanted to duplicate our power, immensity, love, and glory to the infinite within the human act of the creature. And there's no wonder about it. Our divine will is everywhere. Therefore, our acts that animate the acts of the creatures fly, taking shelter inside our volition, even in the most tiny hiding places in which my will is present. These acts serve us as a return of love for the whole of creation, as the sweetest of company, as narrators of our Supreme Being. Therefore our love is exuberant for the one who wants to live in our fiat. We are all eyes over her, almost spying to see when she gives us her act, to let our creative virtue operate in it. The creature is for us the show of our love, the activity of our power, and she becomes the repeater of our own life. After this I continued my round in the divine volition, while my sweet Jesus transported my little will inside the creative act of his will. My God, how many surprises! My poor intelligence gets lost and is unable to say anything. Then my always adorable Jesus, repeating his short little visit, all goodness, told me, "My good daughter, our fiat displayed our operating, powerful, and wise love in the creation, in such a way that all created things are filled with our love, power, wisdom, and unspeakable beauty. We can call them the administrators of our Supreme Being. But we did even more in the creation of the Sovereign Queen. Our love was not satisfied by the mere display. Rather, it wanted to assume the attitude of piety, tenderness, and compassion, so profound and intimate as to be turned into tears for love of the creatures. And this is why, as we pronounced our fiat to create her and called her to life, we created forgiveness, mercy, and reconciliation between us and humankind. And we deposited it in this celestial creature as the administrator between our children and hers. Therefore the sovereign lady possesses seas of forgiveness, mercy, and piety, as well as seas of tears of our love, in which she can cover all human generations, regenerated in these seas created by us within her, seas of forgiveness, of mercy, and of a piety so tender as to soften the hardest hearts. My daughter, it was just that everything was deposited in this celestial mother, so that having to possess the reign of our will, she might be entrusted with everything. She is the only one who has sufficient space to be able to possess those seas created by us. With its creative and preserving power, our will maintains whatever it creates intact, without ever lessening, in spite of our continuous giving. Therefore, where our will is not present, we cannot give, or entrust, or deposit. We just do not find the space. Our love remains hampered to perform the many beautiful works we want to do in the creatures. Only in this sovereign lady did our love not find any obstruction, and it displayed so much and did so many wonders, that it gave her divine fecundity and made of her the mother of her Creator. So my beloved Jesus showed me all the acts that he did together with his celestial mother, and while they were operating, the seas of love from both of them became one, and, raising their waves up to heaven, invested everything. Even our divinity, forming a thick rain of love upon our divine being, they carried the love of everyone, the refreshment and balm by which our divine being remained soothed, turning justice into motion of love for the creatures. One can say that our love regenerated the human family with new love, and God loved it with doubled love. But where? In the Queen and in her dear Son. Now listen to another surprise. When I, as a little baby, was suckling the milk from my mamma, I suckled the souls, because she kept them in deposit. And in giving me her milk, she deposited all souls within me. She wanted me to love them, kiss them all, and make of them my victory and her own. Not only this, in giving me milk, she also made me suckle her maternity and tenderness, imposing herself on me so that I loved the souls with maternal and paternal love. I received her maternity and her unspeakable tenderness within me, so I loved the souls with divine, maternal, and paternal love. After she deposited all the souls within me, with one of my stratagems of love, with a breath, with a sweet gaze, I redeposited them again in her maternal heart, and to repay her I gave her my paternal love, my divine love, which is unceasing, firm, unshakable, and never moves. Human love changes easily, so I wanted my inseparable mother to have the same attributes of my love, and to love souls the way only a God can love. Therefore every single act we did, from the tiniest to the greatest, was an exchange of deposit of souls, I in her, she in me. Even more, I can say that we duplicated this deposit of souls because I kept inside my divine heart with highest jealousy all that I received from my dear mamma as the greatest gift she could give to me. And she received my gift so jealously that she used all her maternity to keep that gift which her son was giving to her. Now, in these exchanges of deposit, our love grew and loved all creatures with new love. We formed projects on how to love them more and how to win them all through love, exposing our life to rescue them. End of February 14th. Fiat.